Hi, this is Steve Fabian. We're going to continue our series today. And in our last video, I showed you how to create an add screen where you could add records to your table. Today we'll do edit and delete. And so this is where we left off. We've got a screen, our main view for our module, and it uses all the different technologies that we've talked about to retrieve data from a series of linked tables in the database and display that data on the screen. Okay? So we'll pick up and now we'll add the ability to edit one of these records. Okay, so we're back in our Visual Studio solution, and under our Views folder, we're going to make some changes to our view to add an edit icon, basically the edit pencil that we can click on, which will take us to the edit screen. So in our table, I'm going to define an additional header, 16 pixels wide, which is where our image will be displayed. And then in our body, for each row, I've added a new column with a class of tdEdit, and we're going to use an href tag, an a tag, as a link, and use an image source to go and grab the edit pencil graphic from our content images folder and use that for the image. Now you'll notice that I'm going to use Knockout data binding to bind the ID, the unique ID of each row, to the a tag, so that we can reference it in jQuery when they click on it and get the ID, so that when we redirect to the edit URL, we go to the edit screen, we pass the ID of the item that we've clicked on, so that we can go retrieve the proper item. So we're going to bind an attribute to our a tag using the Knockout data binding. So we're binding the attribute with a name of ID, and we're going to give it the value of ID, which is the same way we bind that ID to the columns. So here we have a column, we're data binding the text property of that column to the ID value of the task for each row. And for our a tag, we're going to data bind an attribute named ID to that unique ID item for each task. Okay, so the result is that when they click on it, right, and again looking at this class edit link, we're going to use standard jQuery, and we're going to hook anything with a class of edit link, we're going to hook into the click event. Right, so for each row we're going to have this column, and it's going to have a class assigned to it called edit link, and this jQuery will intercept any time one of these edit a tags is clicked on. And when it's clicked on, it's going to go and retrieve the attribute named ID and assign it to a variable with capital ID. And then we're using the edit URL, which is constructed in the common base class for our to-do list modules. Right. We're using the .NETNuke edit URL, which returns the edit URL for our module, and we're injecting that as a variable named _edit URL into every page that inherits from or implements the to-do list module base class. Okay. So we're going to use that edit URL. We're going to add /ID/ and then we're going to add this ID, which will be the unique ID of the item that was clicked on. So this is going to then redirect us to the edit page, passing a name-value pair on the query string with a value of name of ID and a value of the unique ID of the item that they clicked on. Okay. So that's how we construct that. We'll save this and let's go back and refresh our web page. Okay, and you see we now have pencils over here. Okay, and when we click on them, right, it's going to redirect us to the edit URL and pass the task ID. So this would pass an ID of 1, and clicking on the second one would pass an ID of 2. Okay, so that's all the changes we have to make to our view page in order to implement the edit control. Okay, so now let's go ahead and create our edit page. So two components, right? We have our view and our view model. So we're going to create a new ASCX control named edit. Okay. We need that ID of the item that we're going to pass in, and I'll show you how we get that into the JavaScript. So remember, I'm passing the ID in on the command line, and if we look at the code behind for our edit control, you'll see here In the page load, I'm grabbing that ID out of the query string. So back on our view, when you clicked on the pencil, it constructed the edit URL. It pulled the ID, the unique ID, from the attribute named ID for each hyperlink and constructed that edit URL. Now in my edit page, I'm going to go and pull that ID from the query string and store it in a server-side variable called this item ID. And now on our view, right, we're using the standard ASP.NET server-side tags to get access to that variable, this item ID, and assign it to a local variable called underscore ID on the client side so that we can reference it within our JavaScript. Okay. Then this is a very standard .NET form. We've got a field set, we've got a class, .NET form, we have our DNN form items. This is exactly the same as we did in our add page. So we have a text box for our task, it's required. We've got drop-down lists for our category, for the person that we can assign the task to, and for our status. This is the same markup from the add page. And now we've got a couple buttons at the bottom. So we have our DNN Actions class, and we've got two link buttons, one to update our task and one to delete our task. And again, this is very similar to the code, the markup for our add page. Okay. The difference is going to be in the view model. So if we go look at our view model, edit view model, you'll see a lot of the same kind of things that we did in our add page. We're creating models for our status, for status items, our category items, and our person items. In our view model, we're creating observable arrays for our 3 drop-down lists, because we're going to go and retrieve data from our database through our WCF data service, and we're going to then bind, we're going to then initialize observable arrays using Knockout. We're going to grab the data from the table and data bind them to drop-down lists, so that on the edit screen you can select, first see which was selected previously, and then select the value for each of those drop-down lists. We have our data for our to-do list item, so we've got our ID, our module ID, person, and we have selected status, selected person, selected category, which are observable items, and will give us access to which of the drop-down list collection of items is currently selected. Okay. And then the standard OData functions to load the status, so we use our service URL variable that's defined in our base module base class. And we're going to do an OData read to go grab all the to-do list status items, and when we get that data back, we're going to store them in the statuses observable array. You've seen this pattern before. Categories, we do the same thing. We're going to go grab all the categories. We'll sort them by name and load up the categories observable array. And then the same thing with people. We're going to go grab from the users collection, and we're going to initialize our people observable array. Now, one additional function that we need is to go and load a specific item from the to-do list item table, and the URI for doing that is the service URL, our to-do list item collection, and then in parentheses pass in the primary key value. Now remember, back on our main view markup, we're grabbing this item ID, which is a server-side variable that we get from the query string. We're placing the value in a client-side JavaScript variable called underscore ID, and now we're using that to construct our service URL, our OData read request, to go grab that specific record from the to-do list item table, and we're using our expand syntax to say also bring back the associated status, category, and user record for that specific item.